Welcome back to the Living Markets. Credit Suisse just released its new Global Wealth Report 2018 today. And to talk about the results, I'm now joined by Christine Schmid. She's the head of investment solutions at Credit Suisse. Thank you so much for joining us, Christine. So first of all, there's more wealth globally, but not so in Switzerland. Why is this happening?
Well, if you take it on normal FX rates, with the US dollar strengthening 3.8%, I think that's the main effect. Now, if you look at smoothed FX rates, then we can see that non-financial wealth rose by 5%, financial wealth even rose by 1.8%, but debt level as well rose, and this by 9%. So adjusted on smoothed FX, we're slightly up by 1%, but if you take FX on a year-over-year basis, yes, Switzerland is down.
There are now 42.2 million more millionaires in the world compared to just 2.3 million millionaires more last year. Where do these millionaires come from? Which countries?
You're right. There are 42.2 million millionaires globally, which is 0.8% of the population, but 45% of the wealth. The leader is still the US, but number 2 and 3 switched ranks. Number 2 is already China, which had a tremendous growth, followed by Japan on rank 3.
So the number of Chinese millionaires and also billionaires is rising rapidly. More ultra-high net worth individuals in cities like Beijing and Shanghai. Do you see this trend continue? And what are some of the growth factors? Is it, the innovation sector and more startup entrepreneurs, the likes of Alibaba's Jack Ma?
So China is still a country where we see the bulk of the population on the middle income ranks. And we expect as well the middle class to drive the economic growth and the consumption pattern forward. On the ultra-high side, it's still led by Europe and US, and this might remain for the coming years. So. But you're absolutely right. There are clear indications, as we have found as well with our family report. We looked at family-owned businesses where Asian countries have a material part of it already. And we changed that allocation, included up to 50% of Asian companies by now.
You mentioned that China will take some time to take over the United States, but by when do you expect China to take over the United States? Any estimate?
That's a very difficult question. I think there is no estimate to be done here, but clearly China is growing. And if you look at out to the year 2023, so we do a projection for the next 5 years, the Chinese number of millionaires is rising by 62%. Total number of millionaires is rising from today's 42 million up to 55 million. And the bulk of that growth is coming from emerging markets and China in particular.
So let's talk about women and wealth. And globally, women make up about 40% of the global wealth. Do you see this trend continue?
Well, female make up 40% of the global wealth. On the millionaires, I think we haven't given a number there. Nevertheless, what we see is clear that the wealth part of the females is growing. Again, leading at the moment is US and Europe with 40 to 45% of the wealth in the hands of female. China runner-up with 30 to 40% of wealth, the same as LATAM. And the other APAC countries a bit lagging and highly heterogeneous by 25 to 35%. Yes, we expect that to continue. This has to do with really the access to education, with the fact that female marry later. If they marry later, slightly less kids, and if later, having kids. And I think you mentioned before innovation and the access to the funding of innovation to venture capital. We expect as well China to take a chunk there.
Now, it seems that a lot of women in advanced economies are falling behind. Life is getting harder for the female millionaires in Western countries. Why do you think this is happening?
I wouldn't say life is getting harder, but we have to wake up to the reality that incomes means working. So it's a life decision. If you look at Switzerland in particular, the percentage of female working part-time is still quite high. And that brings me to another topic I think we haven't touched upon. For example, if you work 60%, you have to be aware that you make up of around 46% of your maximum pension. So it's a life decision if you want to work or not, and I can only highly recommend to be part of the workplace here.
It seems that from an investment perspective, a lot of women are more risk averse, right? How do you see their investment strategies going forward in terms of, allocation of portfolios and so on?
I think it's a combination of risk averseness and trust and financial literacy. Women on top feel that they're well knowledgeable in terms of the financial markets. Relative to men, they tend to be slightly overconfident on the other side. So really, it's important that financial literacy is taking place, that they're guiding through. They highly respond to referrals as well. So if someone has had a good experience, that this is shared. And we expect female, in particular because of the pensions theme, as well to be more invested on the risky asset side, because you have to close the gap. That's not possible to close it with being invested in cash at 0.3% return.
Very interesting from your Global Wealth Report is also to see that female millennials and female millennial millionaires are doing much better than their male counterparts. Why do you think this is?
Our study has found that female millennials do better. One of the main explanations is that during the financial crisis, they were employed by sectors that didn't experience such a big turmoil. So male, predominantly in finance and construction, where the unemployment rate were shooting higher. In the US, we had a record of unemployment rate on the 20 to 24-year-old of 17.8% relative to above 10% for the female. So the female had an ability there to catch up because they stayed employed relative to their male counterparts.
Before we go, Christine, what is your success recipe for a young female millennial to become a millionaire here in Switzerland?
I think it's important that you invest early, that you stay focused and even invested in times of turmoil, because the worst thing you can do is if markets correct, that you then switch back to cash and never invest again. So in a balanced portfolio and stay invested.
Great advice. Thank you so much for joining us, Christine. And that's it for the living markets tonight. And coming up on tonight's Going Green, we talk about the next big thing, carbon emissions trading, with Dirk Forster from the International Emissions Trading Association. Plus, she's the first and only female owner of an airline in Switzerland. Helen Neidhardt is our guest on the Executive Talk tonight. And don't forget, you can catch up with all of our content, interviews and stories on cnnmoney.ch. Follow me on Twitter at Martina Fuchs CNN. There's much more to come here on the Swiss Pulse, so don't go away.